cash dividend, of course, will be distributed. Of course, when you have this information regarding the percentage provided on the share capital ordinary, or on share preference, etc. And of course, we'll see other scenarios when you have, as I said, more complicated situations. When it's about, of course, preference shares that are, when say, cumulative, participating, and all of this stuff. Okay, so we'll start with the first here, basic illustration. 2019, here we have Mason Company that decided to distribute 50,000 as cash dividend. It's outstanding, of course, ordinary shares have a par value of 400, and its 6% preference shares has a par value of 100,000. Okay. So the first here scenario is that the preference shares are non-cumulative and non-participating. So what does it mean, non-cumulative and non-participating? So here it said that there is, when, as I said, there is a situation that a firm may have not distributed dividend in prior periods and then decide in the current period to distribute. Okay, so in this situation, in this, of course, first scenario, preference shareholders, they don't have the right to receive at first what you call dividends in arrears. So meaning the dividends that should have been distributed, of course, because of the prior period, but they were not. Okay, so there will be just receiving, of course, dividend for the current period once it was declared. Non-participating because in situations that we can have preference shareholders, they will just receive the percentage as it is, of course, declare it from the beginning when they just purchased these preference shares. But at the same time, if the amount of, let's say, of cash dividend to be distributed, we have a remaining really portion after paying preference and ordinary shares, they can participate in what is left. Okay, so we'll see that example. But in this first scenario, we just assume that we have what? Preference shareholders that will be receiving 6%, of course, of their par value shares. Okay, donc هنا per value shares of it is 100,000. Okay, so the rate is 6%. Okay. So again, when we have to distribute dividends, so the priority will be to preference shareholders. So this is, of course, the essence even of having, of course, these preference shares is that to have priority against the ordinary shareholders. Okay, so if we just multiply 6% by 100,000, so here we got what? We got 6,000 as preference shareholders. Okay, donc that's how much, of course, we should give our preference shareholders, based, of course, on the rate that they already agreed up, and of course when they just purchased these shares. Okay. Okay, so if we decided to distribute $50,000, so 6,000 from this 50,000 should be in priority distributed to the preference shareholders. So what is left here for the ordinary shareholders? We got 44,000. So that is 50,000 less 6,000. So the remaining will be distributed to ordinary shareholders. Okay, so that's the first scenario, the first basic scenario, when the preference shareholders will just receive, as I said, the declared rate. Of course, there is no dividends in area, so they are non-cumulative, non-participating, etc. Okay. The second situation here, assuming that we have preference shares that they are what? So still the same here scenario. We have 50,000 as cash dividends. We have the par value 400, of course, for this ordinary shares, and of course 6% preference shares with the par value of 100. It said now that we got what? Cumulative preference shares, but still non-participating. Okay. It said also that the Mason Company did not pay dividends on the preference shares in the preceding 2 years. So you see here, we got 2 prior years with no distribution of dividends. So now if we decide to distribute 50,000 cash dividend, we should first of all pay preference shareholders for the 2 prior period and also the current period. Okay, so we should first of all measure how much we have dividends in area. So this is what we mean by prior year's dividend, okay? Dividends in arrears. So here we have 2 years, again, 6% of this 100,000 par value. So it will be 12,000 here as, of course, preference shares, okay? So still, that's for the prior period. We are not yet done, okay? We should also pay 6,000 for the current period for the preference shares. So here, preference shareholders will receive in total 18,000 from this 50. So what is left will be distributed, of course, to the ordinary shares, okay? Ordinary shareholders here will receive 32,000 from this, of course, 50,000 that was entitled to be as cash dividend, okay? Is that clear, please? Is that okay? Any?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, good. So this is, as I said, the second scenario when we have what we called cumulative. So remember always that when it is cumulative preference shares, so the year we decided to distribute cash dividend, we should first of all pay for our prior periods dividends. Of course هنا نحكي just على for preference shareholders, because for ordinary shareholders once there is no distribution of dividend they lose the right to receive it, okay? So ما فماش dividends in area ولا the situation, and that's why of course we got this preference shares let's say privileges against of course the ordinary ones, okay? Now if we assume that they are non-cumulative but fully participating, of course, we got what? We got 50,000 to distribute at cash, taking into consideration that the preference shareholders will get a rate of 6%, and also they have to participate for 4%, okay? We will have to decide, or we'll be measuring, of course, the rate of participation. We'll see together, okay? So what will be the current year? It is 6,000 for the current year's dividend. As you see here, the preference shareholders will always receive 6%, the same example here, times the 100, so it is 6,000. For ordinary shareholders, of course, we assume that they will have, of course, the same rate, donc 6% times the 400, the par value, so it is 24. So here we got 30,000 to be distributed to both. But of course, we have a remaining here amount, okay? Remaining of 20,000, okay? At 20,000, of course, it will be used actually to what? To be also distributed to preference and to ordinary shares, okay? But now we should know what will be the rate. We cannot, for example, use the 6%, okay? How we learned this 4%, that's the participating rate, okay? So we should first of all measure what is the par value of the shares that are to participate, meaning so the total par value of the preference and the ordinary, okay? So it is 500, so we just need to divide the amount over the par value, so that's what how we get the 4%, okay? So what is left here, amount that will be for participation, over the total par value, meaning of course those that have the right to receive, of course, dividends, so in terms of shares outstanding for preference and ordinary shares, okay? So this is the total of 500, so if we just divide 20 by 500, so we got the 4%, okay? So, and then of course we simply apply the 4% to each par here, 4% of the 100, so that's 4,000, and also 4% of to 400, it is 16. This is how we let's say share this amount, of course, this reminder of 20,000 between preference and ordinary shares, after of course giving them, of course, their initial rate, which is 6%, of course, for the current year. You see here? So that's the situation when you have these preference shares that they are fully participating, but also non-cumulative. So here we're just talking about the current period. So we just pay for the current year preference shares, current period ordinary shares, but then if there is any money left, any portion left, which should be also distributed to preference and ordinary. So that's how preference shareholders will be participating in this left here amount. But also, of course, we should first of all know what will be the rate to use to distribute, and of course to share the left amount between both here category of investors. So we will just divide the remaining amount by the total of par value here of outstanding shares. You got the participating here rate, and then of course you just apply it, and then of course you got already the 50,000 entirely distributed to preference and ordinary. So preference will receive 10,000 and ordinary will be receiving 40,000 for the current period. Okay. If now we consider that we got really the entire here, all of these scenarios in one, okay? So we have cumulative, fully participating, and also we have what we call two dividends in area, okay? So I have preference shareholders that will be receiving as a priority the two early periods dividends, then the current period, and then we will just pay the ordinary shareholders the current period dividends, and then of course if there is any money left, then it will be also shared between preference and ordinary shareholders. We will measure of course the participating here rate as we just learned, okay? So how much we got dividends in area? Again, we have 6% times the 100 for 2 years, so it is 12. We got also 6% for one times the 100, so that's the 6,000 of the current period. We got also 6% for the ordinary, so it's 6% times the 400, so that's the 24,000 here. So as total, we got what? We got 12, that is for the prior period, and 30 for the current period, that is distributed, of course, entirely for both here shareholders. So we got 42,000. So what is left here, it is 8,000, okay? And then, of course, if we want to know this participating, of course, rate, we should just what? Divide the 8,000 over the 500,000 here par value of both here preference and ordinary shares. So we got this 1.6%. We just use it multiplying, of course, this 1.6 for 8% here to get. So the 8,000 of course will be distributed like what? So 1.6 times the 100 and 1.6 times the 400. So this is the amount, and that's of course the total of 8,000. That's the remaining amount that is here distributed because of this participating right given to preference shareholders, in addition of course to the cumulative privilege. Okay, is that clear, please? Any question, please?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, good. We'll see how when we measure the book value per share here, how it will be, as I said, impacted by these privileges provided, of course, to preference shareholders. Okay. So we know how we measure the book value per share. Okay. So that's the net asset. So meaning the equity, of course, divided by what? By the number of outstanding shares at the end of the year. Okay. So we have what? We have total equity over the total number of outstanding shares. So we have what? The book value per share. So it's already have, yes, you see here, that's the book value per share. So that's the ordinary shareholders equity over the outstanding shares. Okay, so it's more about, of course, the ordinary book value per share. That is what? That is as it is said here, the amount that each share will receive if the company were liquidated on the basis of amounts reported on the statement of financial position. So that's it, what it will be actually the book value of one ordinary share that will be receiving if the firm will be liquidated. Okay, so here as ordinary shares in this example will be receiving 10 here dollar per share. Okay, but I will see, of course, this is the situation when we got preference shares and of course ordinary shares. So how this book value per share will be measured? Did you already talked about that in other lessons or courses? No? Yes?
I think we saw a little bit in the FSA.
Okay. So the situation here is that in this example, what we get? We get, we have equity here with preference shares that are 300,000. We have ordinary shares of 400. We have share premium ordinary 37, and we have retained earnings of 162,582. Okay, so the total share capital or ordinary equity, let's say here it is 600. If we divide it by the number of shares outstanding, we got, of course, the book value per share. Okay, so that's, of course, when we have no issue of dividends in area. Okay, so this is the situation, the basic situation when you have preference shareholders, but we have no issue of dividends that were not distributed in prior periods. Okay. Now, if we got the situation, assuming that the same situation here exists, but except that we have 5% preference shares that are cumulative, participating up to 8%, and that dividend for the 3 years before the current year are in area. So here the thing is that we got what? We have 5% preference shares which are cumulative, so meaning that they need to receive 3 years in area dividends. Also the current period, still 5%, of course, and then of course they have to they are participating up to 8%, so meaning they got additionally 3% of dividends, of course, if there is any remaining amount. Okay, so we'll see how this, of course, presence of all of these, let's say, privileges and issues will be impacting, of course, how the book value per share, of course, the amount will be measured. Okay, so still we got these ordinary shares of 400. We have share premium. There is no problem. The problem is that, of course, for the retained earnings here. Okay, so with for the retaining earning, we should what? We should actually split it between those that will be pertaining actually to the preference shares and those that are will be pertaining, of course, to the ordinary shares. Okay, donc احنا in this prior example we got how much? We got 162,582 as retained earnings as a total. Okay, so from this 162,582 we got what? We got to measure how much should be, let's say, distributed if we are distributing dividend to preference shareholders. So we have 3 years in area for 5%, of course, times the par value here of 300,000. Okay, donc عنا 5% times the 300, that is 15, times 3 years, of course, that is the 45. Okay, so this is the dividend scenario. Then we should also consider the current period, which is 5%. So it is 15,000, of course. The current period is only 15%. So that's the 60,000. Okay. For the of course, if you consider the same here rate of 5% that will be distributed to the ordinary shares, so the ordinary shareholders will be receiving 20,000. So what is left here? If you just sum up here, so we have 45, we have 15, 60, we have 80. So what we got additionally here participating here, we have in addition, they are to receive in addition to the 3%. Okay, so 3% times still the 300, that is the 9,000, then also 3% times the 400, that is the 12,000. So that's, of course, what is let's say will be distributed. كنحسبوهم هذوما 60 plus 9, 69, وعنا of course 32. Okay, 69 and 32. ما كنتش عارف فيها بالحساب. Anyways, just to go back.
101.
So 101, yes. وعنا هو it was 162. Okay, so what is left still to the ordinary shareholders, it is 61. Okay, donc please, the objective from this just computation and measurement is that to, as I said, to let's say separate the component of the retained earnings for those that they are, as I said, pertaining to the preference shareholders, as if there is, of course, a distribution of dividends now, and of course those that will be remaining to ordinary shares, okay, after distribution, of course, dividends. So now we assume that we will pay off for the prior periods of 3 years, then the current period, then of course the participating of 3%, of course, participating here additionally for the preference shareholders. For the ordinary shareholders, we should just measure the current period, of course, and then what is left from this 162, okay? Donc, if we sum up the share capital ordinary, my share premium, this, of course, dividends that are, let's say, pertaining, of course, to ordinary shareholders, plus what is left, we got this total of 531. So if you compare it with the 600, so there is really big difference. علاش؟ على خاطر نحينا منها what was here 69 اللي هي this is the amount that is as you can see هنا عنا it was 300, now we added 69, of course, to the preference shareholders total, of course, equity, okay? That now if we want to measure the book value per share here, so that's of course the ordinary shares, of course, book value will be what? Dividing the total 531 by 4,000, so it will be 132. So if you compare it, you see here when you got any dividend scenario, any situation, of course, of cumulative preference shareholders participating, etc., you will see that your book value per share will drop. علاش? That's of course it makes sense. على خاطر ديما we always give priority to what? To paying off debt and of course preference shareholders, and then what is remaining, the residual will be distributed, of course, to the ordinary shareholders, okay? Donc, even though when we're talking about the book value per share, it should take into consideration if there is any preference shareholders, if they are cumulative, if they are participating or not. So now retained earning will be, let's say, reduced by, in case, of course, we are distributing dividend, of course, this amount that are, let's say, pertaining to whom? To the preference shareholders. يعني أنا حتى can we are not distributing in the current year, but in the next year when I decided to distribute, to know that we have 69 from the retained earnings that are what? That are the rights, of course, of preference shareholders, because they need to receive this amount, of course, as priority compared, of course, to the ordinary shares. Is that please clear? Any issue, please, before we close this chapter and we leave, please.
مدام remainder to ordinary ال 61 و 500 كيفاش لقينا هذه؟
هذه دونك نرجعوا هنا عندنا شنو؟ عندنا 162 582 هذاك التوتال retained earnings، نحينا منه 69 ونحينا منه زاد 32.
اوكي
Okay, so it was 101. يظل لي زكريا هكا قال لنا الاماونت I don't know ولا رامي I don't know. En tout cas, عندنا donc 101. It was the total of this, as I said, dividend requirement to be paid for preference and also for ordinary shares, and the remainder, of course, will be. Donc احنا كي نقولوا remainder, of course, to ordinary. What does it mean? Meaning that I already, let's say, assuming that I separated or I just made in, let's say, I just kept this amount, let's say, restricted to preference shareholders. Donc, amounts that are restricted, donc نحيناهم retained earnings, so they are appropriated to preference shareholders. What is left, of course, كي أنا خلصت preference shareholders, the entire will be left to whom? To the ordinary shareholders. Donc, ordinary shareholders, of course, they got normal, they will get the rights, of course, for current period dividends, for participating, but also اللي باش يقعد من retained earnings, that's also for the ordinary shareholders. Okay. Hey you. ماشي بنحس فيكم ما عندكم مشكلة.
جست في الآخر تعبنا شوية دقيقة معناها.
هاي وانا ما طولتش، انا كنت معامله باش نبدا ندخل شابيتر اليوم.
Thank you. It's clear.
Okay, good. Please do, if you have any issue, please, again, You can email me. We can discuss it inshallah next time when we'll be on campus. You can ask Ms. Marwa. بالله ما تخليوش les choses ça s'accumule. You are not preference shareholders. You are not accumulating. You don't have the right to accumulate all of this stuff. Okay. خاطر راهو كي نتعداو you see that كيما عملنا في intermediate 1 ولا 2 every time you'll have a special another topic to talk about, another issue to cover. Okay. Donc please ما تخليوش les choses ça s'accumule. You have an issue, just mention it. ما تستناش حتى تقول نرجع نعمل ريفيزيون ونشوف روحي فاهم ولا مش فاهم. No, if there is any problem just mention it before هك ونرجع زيد نقول احنا طب باش نعملوها حكايه الكويزز جينا باش هكاك تراجعوا على رواحكم. مي ميم طون وحكيت راهو مع مدام مروه راهو those who are just returning copy paste of a solution راهو they will get 0. راهو croyez-moi ça sera un 0 où il y aura pas de retour sur ce 0 hein. Donc you better work individually تنسوا حكاية solutions و even you justify the process ولا the journal entries ولا the measurement that you did. Okay, donc it will be an extra work for you, extra effort باش نحيو من حكاية راهو it's not a question of grades hein. D'accord, it's not a problem of grades, it's a problem of mastering, of learning. Okay, so if you master, if you learn, you don't need even to just ترجعوا لها solution etc. D'accord, donc انا علمتكم مادام مره سور ما شكريتوها ولا باش تشوفوها بعد وتعلمكم ولا راي علمتكم. donc these are our provisions, these are our course indenture, so you should of course keep them in mind باش ما نجيوش بعد في الانترميديت 2 في الفاينل في الجريدز اكسيتيرا نولي في مشكله اخرى وما عادش فما arrangement. Is that clear? Once for all of you. donc عندكم مشكله you have to state it من الاول. داكوغ عندك مشكله ميساج ابعث لي ايميل انا قلت لك بغينا ديسكاسيت حتى كي نحضر في السيانس الجايه مع مدام مروه اللي لا aussi pour éclaircir les choses. We do our best of course that we make things of course easier for you. Okay, but if it is okay, so we'll see you inshallah next Tuesday inshallah on campus. Okay, thank you for your presence and sorry again for this inconvenience. I know you don't prefer the online session, me too, but I was obliged. I'm really sorry. Okay, see you inshallah. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you
Thank you.
too. Au revoir.